Good morning and happy Father's Day. Father's Day has never been a big deal to me, and I know that sounds like such a shitty thing to say, but my dad left my mom while I was in kindergarten, and he wasn't really in mine and my sister's lives much after that. Then, when I grew up and had kids, history repeated itself, and I was a single mom. Now, believe it or not, there was a time when we attended church on a regular basis. Now, I was never the holy roller, but here in the South, is what you're supposed to do on Sunday. Now, the last time I set foot in a church, it happened to be on a Father's Day. I actually left in the middle of the service that morning. For all my years of motherhood, I've had to endure a preacher telling my kids and every other kid in the congregation that they need to have a father in the home. It had to be that way because children from broken homes end up in jail or on drugs or alcoholics or whatever bad things. Just having a dad in the house would keep them from that happening, right? So, another thing that I had thought about that too was that what if the father is abusive to either the kids or the mom, or he's a drug addict or an alcoholic or out running the streets, committing adultery, whatever, but as long as they're in the home, that's a good influence on your kids, right? I know it just sounds stupid to say. Well, to those preachers and anyone else who believes that crap, I'd like to say the joke is on them. I have 3 kids that I raised without the help of a man. And even though I still have one that hasn't reached adulthood yet, my kids are just fine. My daughter, she's a really good mom. She's a good wife. She works 2 jobs and she's also attending college. She's got a heart of gold and she'll do anything for anybody, and especially animals. Like, she's got a big heart for animals. My son Alex, the one who does the podcast with me most of the time, he's a very outstanding young man. He just graduated this month from high school, and he's a big teddy bear. He has a really big heart, and he would give the shirt off of his back if he needed to anybody. Now, are my kids perfect? No, not even close. But they're a lot better off coming from a so-called broken home than they would have with their dad living in the same home with them. Now, having said that, I do want to say that I don't think all men are evil. I don't want anybody to think that this is a man-bashing thing. Men are not evil. Some men are, but not all men are. I'm not going to say that. There's no way I could raise my boys with that kind of mindset. Now, I know a lot of dads that do go like above and beyond for their kids. And to those, I hope you have the best Father's Day ever. Now, we've talked a lot on this show about women and mothers who kill. But last week, my mom sent me an idea that I thought would be perfect for Father's Day in my twisted little head. And that's what we're talking about today.
Mystery, murder, and magic, heroes, and Alex.
Well, Alex isn't with us today. It's just me. Sorry. But anyway, like I was saying earlier, we're all familiar with names like Susan Smith, Andrea Yates, and Darlie Reuter. And they all have that one thing in common. They killed their kids. Now, on the flip side of that, you don't hear quite as much talk about those fathers out there who have killed their kids. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, the first one, I remember seeing a show or a story about him on the ID channel a good while back. I don't remember what that show was, but I kept thinking through this whole episode of whatever it was I was watching about him. This man was a nut job. Now, his name is John List. You may have heard of him, maybe not. He was born on September 17th, 1925. He and his family, which included his wife, his 3 kids, and his mom, they all lived in an affluent neighborhood in this really nice home. It was like a mansion that they lived in Westfield, New Jersey. Now, he was an accountant and he lost his job. And he, instead of like seeking out like support from his family, confiding in them what happened, he was embarrassed. So he started making plans to kill them and then start his life all over again. Now, all of this took place in 1971 when John himself was 46 years old. On November the 9th of that year, he put his plan into action. So first what he did was he shot and killed his wife and his mom. And then he sat on the couch patiently waiting for his other kids to come in, or 2 of his kids to come in from school. Now, when they came in, he shot and killed them with the same gun that he had used to kill his wife and mom. After that, he made himself a sandwich. When he finished eating his sandwich, he drove to his oldest son's school to pick him up after a soccer game. And he drove him home, and he also shot and killed this child too. And just like magic, he basically just dropped off the face of the earth for 18 years. Now, when I say he planned all of this out, he was like meticulous in his planning. He canceled their newspaper and their milk delivery. Back then they still had milk delivery. And he had the post office hold his mail. He told the kids' schools that the kids were going to be away visiting their other grandmother who was sick. And she was actually sick, and she had been planning to come visit the family during this time. And he said that if she had actually came and hadn't been sick, she would have been one of his victims. Now, after, he took care of all that, then he wrote a 5-page letter to his preacher at his church, and he left that letter there with his bodies, but he said that he had to kill his family to save their souls because there was too much evil in the world. And he was part of that evil. Now, his family normally kept to themselves, so no one really missed him. And it took like a month for their bodies to be found. Now, that house had to be stinking to high heaven after a month. Now, yeah, it was getting to be colder weather, but, all those bodies. But anyway, so 18 years after the murders, the family story was featured on America's Most Wanted. And within 2 weeks of that being aired, John List was arrested in Richmond, Virginia. John had assumed the name Bob Clark, and that was actually a name, or the name of one of his college roommates. He married another woman, and she had no idea of what he had did before they even met. Now, in 1990, he was convicted of 5 charges of first-degree murder. And he died in prison in 2008 at the age of 82. Now, our next Father of the Year candidate comes to us from Australia. Robert Donald William Farquharson, I believe is how you say that last name, was born in 1969. And in 1990, he fell in love with, and married a lady, gosh, I can't talk today, by the name of Cindy Gambino. Now, the couple ended up having 3 children together. Well, Robert had a history of mental illness, including depression and avoidant personality disorder. Well, in 2004, the couple was doing nothing but fighting, so they divorced, but instead of moving on and healing from it, Robert, he became more angry and resentful. On September the 4th, 2005, which happened to be Father's Day there in Australia, while he was driving the kids back to their mom's house, his car suddenly left the road, crashed through a fence, and ended up in a pond on a private farm. The car started filling up with water, but Robert said he couldn't save the kids, and all 3 drowned that day. Now, the police investigated this for 3 months and concluded that this was not an accident at all. Robert had intentionally ran off the road. They even said that Robert actually had had time to save his kids' lives, but he didn't, and there was absolutely nothing mechanically wrong with the car, and in fact, he hadn't even used the brakes. So it was all intentional. Now, they also found evidence that the oldest child had tried to save the two younger kids. Now, that is just breaks my heart to even think about it. Terribly sad. And the nail in the coffin when it went to trial was there was a friend of Robert's that testified against him. And he said that Robert had told him a few weeks before the wreck that he was going to kill his kids to get even with his ex-wife for leaving him. The farmer that owned the farm where the wreck took place testified that other people had crashed through his fence, but nobody had ever ended up in the pond before. Robert was convicted of murder in 2 separate trials and sentenced to life with a minimum of 33 years. And then we have a man by the name of Ronald Gene Simmons, and it's not the Gene Simmons from Kiss, okay? Now, Simmons was a high school dropout who spent time in both the Navy and the Air Force. In 1960, he married his wife Becky, and over the course of the next 20 years, they had 7 kids. After 22 years in military service, he retired, and the family moved to a compound in Arkansas. Now, the home itself, it was 2 mobile homes that had been welded together. It had no indoor plumbing or any telephone service, and the entire property was surrounded by a 10-foot fence. Now, police started investigating him for child abuse in 1987 based on reports that he was molesting his daughter. But the fact was he had a baby with his daughter. Well, Mr. Simmons didn't want the truth to get out, so just before Christmas that same year, he started putting together a plan. He shot his wife and his oldest son to death and then strangled his 3-year-old granddaughter. Now, when the other kids came home, he told them that he had a Christmas gift for them and he wanted to give it to them one by one. He took each kid into his bedroom, and once he had them in the bedroom, he quietly strangled each of them. Now, a few days later, the rest of the family comes over for their annual Christmas visit, and he killed them too. And by then, he had killed 14 members of his family. He didn't stop there, though, because he went into town and he killed a woman who apparently had turned him down when he had made sexual advances towards her. Now, after shooting her, he goes to 3 different locations and kills 5 more people. After he killed the last person, he waited there where he was for the police. He was given the death penalty. He refused any appeals that he could have used and was executed in 1990 by lethal injection. Now, you might be asking, why would I do this type of episode on the day that we celebrate fathers? And I'm honestly not sure what my answer to that is. Now, maybe it's my way of saying that kids aren't always better off having a dad in the house. I mean, like I said earlier, this is not meant to bash on any man, because, I mean, I have had, positive male role models in my life. My mom's dad, my papa Nick, he was just an incredible man, and he took me and my sister under his wing, and he filled that role, and I mean, uncles and whatnot. So, I mean, I am not a man basher at all, but you can take it for what it is. I mean, but anyway, I do want to end this with saying that if you have a good dad, enjoy every minute you can with him. And don't wait till Father's Day to make him feel special. Y'all have a good day. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow to an all-new full-length episode of Mystery, Murder, and Magic.